Hi, this is Kevin Young
And Dan Hergen.
from Torture, and we would like to wish all the listeners of Pods Like Us a very Merry Christmas.
Or something similar.
Yeah. Happy Hanukkah. Joyous Kwanzaa. What do you say for Ramadan?
Radical
Radical
Ramadan.
There you go. I don't know. Are there any more? What else is there?
Oh, I had a whole list up. Las Posadas.
Oh, have a super Saturnalia.
Yeah, so I had a list there and I closed it, so I probably should have kept it.
Yeah.
Ah well.
Oh well.
Ah well.
What are you gonna do?
Hello and welcome to Pods Like Us. I'm Martin Quibell, known to my friends as Marv, and this time I'm speaking with Jeff from the Lost Christmas podcast. Hey Jeff, thanks for being here and I hope you're okay.
I'm doing very well, thank you. Yeah, I'm super excited and I really appreciate you having me on.
No problem. I've been looking forward to this, especially I want to know where I'm going to jump to this straight away. How did you find the lost? Is it the Lost Years of Santa Claus? How did you get hold of that book or the actual story?
Sure. So that is actually my story. I wrote it. I wrote all the different stories involved. It's kind of a longer story, but I wrote it, and it's intended to pass the story of Santa on to my kids and anyone else who is interested in the story of Santa Claus. I found, as a child, there were so many holes, so I dug in and found, rather than hand wavy explanations, I wanted to make sure there was actually answers. So here we are.
Wow. Do you intend on publishing it sometime?
I am working right now to publish the story. It's a lot more involved than I had anticipated, but I'm very excited. I've had a lot of feedback, a lot of interest, and so hopefully it will be in print before too awfully long. And I don't know what that will look like. I've had illustrators offer to do a children's book version, which I think would be wonderful. And then, obviously I read the summaries of stories on the podcast sometimes. So who knows what format it will take, but fingers crossed, hopefully sooner than later.
Well, it's definitely going to supersede my favorite history of Santa Claus so far, which is the L. Frank Baum version. I love that version.
As do I.
Because he wrote Wizard of Oz and all that, and he wrote the Santa Claus one as well.
Yes, yeah. In fact, he was one of the first, if not the first, author to name the reindeer as well. And there were, I think, 12 of them in the original story, which is super, super interesting. Also, I also love the Life and Adventures of Santa Claus. I love that story. It's a fantastic origin story for a hero, I think. So I'm totally right there with you. I think it's great.
I'm a fan of his work anyway, so automatically, as soon as I saw that in a thrift shop, I was walking around and then I saw this book and I just saw his name. I thought, oh, I've got to have that because number one, I love him, but I also love the whole almost magical side to Christmas.
Yes, most definitely. There's an innate magic that's involved with Christmas time anyway, and I talk about that a lot on the podcast. Just the uncertainty, the unknown. There just seems to be something magical in the air all the time, and I think authors who can capture that are just fun to read. And there's tons of good Santa Claus origin stories and great books to read through. So I try and give recommendations on the podcast when I come across something I really enjoy. So.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed the recommendations you've been mentioning in your shows. How you'll mention like a film that you've got into or a book or something. That's something that's really nice that's been added to the original, because originally you didn't used to do that, and then you brought that in after so long.
That's right. Yeah, I realized that I had this long kind of document of different mediums of of entertainment where it was just Christmas things that I enjoyed, and of course, I have piles of things at the house now that my wife constantly insists that I make sure are not out and about. So plenty of stuff to recommend, and there's more stuff coming out each and every year also, which is wonderful.
Well, if you've got like space in a garage or something, you could always put Christmas things in there, and then let people come and check it all out, and any money that comes from it, put that to charity. Say,
Yeah, I will.
That'll appease the wife.
I'll run turning the garage into a Christmas museum by the wife and see what she says, and I'll run it by the HOA. Who knows what our HOA would say about that? Running a business out of the garage.
That's very true.
But you never know. That's actually not a bad idea. I've got more than enough stuff to make it quite a compelling area.
Well, we've all been in bands that have practiced in garages. So what's the difference, really?
Sure. Yeah, it's one nuisance or another, right?
Jeez. So speaking of the magical aesthetic of Christmas, have you got a special memory about Christmas?
I do actually. I remember I was wow, this is taking me back, and I constantly come back to this memory. So I kind of have two. One is less fulfilling and a little less wholesome, but I had the same nightmare during the day for like 10 Christmases in a row as a child, and I don't know what it is. It was just a weird the exact same dream. So that's definitely magical. I'm not sure why that happened. I'm sure there's my wife is a clinical therapist, so I'm sure she could tell me all sorts of things about that. But as far as a positive memory, I do. I was 7 years old, and it was the first year that I had my own Christmas tree in my room. It was like a 2.5, 3 foot tall Christmas tree. And I woke up early on Christmas morning, and there under my Christmas tree was a brand new Ninja Turtle. And wow. I loved it. That was just the most cool, awe-inspiring, wonderful, magical thing that could have ever happened, and I will forever remember that. In fact, it was a Michelangelo underwater, like one you would wind up and he would swim through the water. So I still remember. In fact, I still have it, and my kids actually play with my Ninja Turtles now sometimes. So.
Well, as they should. They're being brought up properly that way.
Yeah, see, exactly. Yeah, kept some of my toys, not all of them, but I kept the Ninja Turtles, and they love them. So,
good parenting. That is good parenting skills.
I try. That's the best you can do, I think, is you can try and love your kids. That's it. You got to love your kids and just try to be a good parent. So,
introduce them to everything that you loved as a kid and make them into mini versions of yourself.
That's exactly right. It's much like hosting a podcast. You love it and you try the best you can, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but you keep doing it anyway because you love it. So,
and everybody, look at that for a really good segue from Jeff, who segued into. So, what was the inspiration behind starting the podcast?
Sure. So 2020, it was COVID. I worked in the as a data scientist, machine learning engineer in the advertising and marketing space for sports and entertainment at the time. And I was looking to transition, and I had a month between old job and new job. And I was like, you know what? I have always wanted to just talk about Christmas. I have this story to tell also, and I want an excuse to dig into the history of Christmas and to buy more Christmas books. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to do it. And if nobody listens, that's totally okay. It's more for me than anything else, just to get my thoughts out. And I just started it on a whim with no equipment, just my laptop and just basic headphones, not even really a good mic. And it has, it's grown substantially. So, there's obviously struggles involved with starting any podcast. There's the imposter syndrome. Oh, I'm not, nobody wants to listen to this. And the biggest thing with that was that wasn't who I wasn't doing it for anyone else at that point. It was just for me. So if anybody has an idea for a podcast, just start it. It doesn't have to be good. You can always go redo episodes, but just kick it off. Just try. Never hurts, I don't think.
Wow. That's rules to live by, I think, when you're doing podcasts.
I think so. Yeah, I think you can't be afraid of failure, because failure is such a subjective thing, right? So when you're talking about hosting a podcast, if your goal going into it is to, turn it into a career and make money, well, that's certainly a great objective for many people. That's not my objective. I think that would be incredibly difficult to do. And I commend there's lots of people who've been very successful doing that. But if you just have something you want to say, something you want to talk about, just do it. I mean, you never know. All you need is a couple people to catch on, and they share your podcast with other people, and it explodes really quickly.
Yeah. Just think to yourself that if it's something that you're interested in, there are going to be people out there in the world who are similar to you that will think, "Oh, I've been looking for this all this time."
Yes, exactly. Yeah, don't think you're the only one. And even if you are the only one, you might turn other people onto that same thing that you're interested in as well. So you never know.
And if you're really lucky, you might have Brian Earl from Christmas Past advertising you as well, which he has a few times. Brian is a lover of your show for certain, isn't he?
Yes, yeah. So I'm very fortunate in that Jerry from Totally Rad Podcast reached out to me a little over a year ago, and I jumped into the group of Christmas Podcast Network. It's a great group of people. There's a ton of Christmas podcasts. We all help each other, offer advice, and try and share each other's podcasts. And I've been very fortunate that people appreciate the work that I do, and there's so many great podcasts. In fact, I need to share some more. So at the end of this, I'm going to plug a few, if that's okay with you. I'm going to plug a few people who I think are doing a great job.
That's number 13 on the bullet list.
Perfect.
Go, putting the curtain away there, a bit like Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, we're peeking ahead. Sorry about that.
Hi, this is David from This Goose is Cooked, and we would like to wish all the listeners of pods like us a very Merry Christmas. And if you're having trouble writing your Christmas cards, remember, a picture is worth 1,000 words.
So you started the show and you've explained some hurdles that you got over, which was mainly getting over the thing of, oh, am I right for this sort of thing? And then you had the music from the start as well. Mm-hmm. And so out of interest, as a side thing, I love the new logo, by the way. I think that's brilliant.
Thank you. Plug to Agwe Designs. He is fantastic. I believe his podcast is Closer to Christmas. He does an excellent job. He does live drawings also on his Instagram, and I think on TikTok as well. Got to give credit to him. I've been wanting a new logo that was not just a stock image. Although I think the image that I had was very fitting for kind of the style of podcast that I had. But I really enjoy this, and I'm very grateful that he was able to create something that I think fits the podcast really well.
So where did the music come from then?
Sure. So I have a friend who does some of the music for the University of Michigan athletics program, and he does kind of music on the side. And I was asking him, hey, I'm looking for music. I'm not looking to pay a whole bunch of money, but I also don't want to rip off somebody's work. So I said, hey, well, where is their music, and how do I attribute music? Where's their publicly available music? So I did some searching. He sent me to a couple of resources, and I found this person I've never met, D Yankee, but they have a bunch of their music that they put out for free. Just all they ask for is attribution. I don't do any ads on my podcast. And I don't think that I ever will. So that's their only rule, is just if you're going to use the music tribute, give them credit, which I do in the credits every time. So I did some searching. I found some kind of quirky music because I'm kind of quirky. So if you listen to the music all the way through, it's got some weird stuff in it, but I really enjoy it, and I think it fits the theme of the podcast pretty well too.
Well, that's I've not even thought about bringing this in, but. Yeah, that's the thing with your show, is that it's produced. You've got this going on underneath as well below that. So it adds an almost comfortable level to it. And it's incredibly Christmassy feel, actually. It reminds me of, when the old specials, you'd have probably, Bing Crosby or somebody there and they would always have something in the background where they're talking. So it's like it's like a comfort blanket in a way.
That's how I saw it too. Now, I will say I had some listeners who did not enjoy the background music, so I have since dropped it in the most recent episodes. But I miss it. I like it, so I may bring it back, much to the chagrin of some of the listeners. But I'll tone down the volume a little bit, I guess. But I'm much like you. I love the old timey. It's like a musical blanket, I guess. Like it makes you feel good. At least it does for me. So I love having the kind of jazzy, symphonic sort of music.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. It's probably just people who, the levels, maybe they might think, oh, I can't hear you very well because the music's drowning you out to some people. Because as some people get older, their hearing goes a bit funny, doesn't it? So
it does, yeah. And you never know what someone's settings are also, like on their whether they're mixed in a certain way or something. So I try and listen to all the messages and respond to everybody that sends feedback, because I welcome it. I mean, everybody doesn't have to be super positive. I welcome the criticism too, because you learn from it, and I've adapted a few things and changed a few things. So I try not to take things personally whenever somebody is sending their opinion on the podcast.
I'll just suggest to people that if you're going to do that, highlight the positives as well at the same time. And so you just go to say to people, I like this, and this, but this one just niggles me slightly.
Yeah, that is most welcome. It's always good to have, or sandwich it, like start with a compliment. In the middle, you add some sort of, maybe a criticism or a critique, and then end with another compliment, just to wrap it in a nice little bow. But like I said, I welcome kind of any and all. I've had angry, I've had lovely, I've had uncomfortable emails. So I've had the full gamut of messages.
That's a good way to describe it, that, because it's almost like if you're going to have a burger from McDonald's, unfortunately, you've got to get past the gherkin.
Yes, exactly.
You might like everything else except for the gherkin, but
that's right.
Just put that in there, and then everything else is fine.
That's right. You can eat around it if that's what you want to do. Yeah.
So, first of all, did you actually finish writing the story before you started the podcast?
So, yes and no. I'm constantly editing, especially now as trying to get it published. There's all sorts of edits to do, and there's lots of stories that I haven't even begun to touch on in the podcast. So yes, I had the entire outline and the major portion of the story, the big key points written. I'm still, fiddling with a few pieces and maybe some different character traits and things like that. But for the most part, the outline is set, and the story is, and so the fun part about the Lost Years of Santa Claus is that it's kind of a living history. So it's continuing to evolve, and there's the opportunity for kind of additions because it's based on, it's supposed to be like a living history of Santa Claus. So it's kind of a fun way to look at it, I guess, is it never has to stop being written if I don't want to.
But of course, like everybody else, Santa Claus changes over the years, so that will
definitely
happen.
Oh boy, we could, if you wanted to talk about that, we could dive into that, and I can talk about the evolution of the character of Santa Claus for the next 2 years if we wanted to. I'm fascinated by the history and just the traditions of the winter season, and then specifically Christmas, obviously.
Are there any actual, well, we're about to go into the subject of research. Are there any actual books that you think specifically are the go-to books yourself that you really love to dive into?
So I do have one. Right. It's actually right next to me. It's called The Encyclopedia of Christmas, and I highly recommend it. It is out of print, but there are used copies that float around. It was, from what I've found, every used copy I've seen has been from a library, like from a library sale. So I highly recommend that. There's also an Atlas of Christmas that is really interesting, and it kind of highlights unique and interesting things around the world. And then as far as Santa Claus, I would recommend Santa Claus, Last of the Wild Men. which really dives into the kind of the historical evolution of the character, the wintertime gift bringer, and kind of the implications therein. So those are three, but I mean, and if we want to talk fiction, there's also tons of fiction that's fantastic.
Okay.
And I think that's all that's within reach right now. I'd have to get up to go get a few more, but there's certainly plenty that abound.
You've just got me looking now online for an encyclopedia of Christmas.
You're welcome. Yeah,
I've just
you
found
won't be
them.
disappointed. It's a great book. It really is.
So, what sort of research, when you are doing it, are you doing it in a specific order? So you'll have specific subjects that you're hitting on at a certain time, and then what research do you do leading up to that?
Yeah, so season 3, this is season 3 that I'm currently in. I call it the season of Santa. So what I've done primarily with season 3 is I set about, and I wrote down a list of about 30 different Santa Claus and gift bringing characters from around the world. So Hoteosho from Japan, the Weihnachtsmann from Germany, the Reyes Magos, or the Wise Men, just different gift bringers. And so so I start with an idea. And sometimes it's ideas that people send to me, like the Christmas tree, the greenery, what's the history of that? Or, the history of Christmas songs, things like that. So I write down, I have an ongoing list of just a Google Doc of ideas for episodes. And then when I have an idea that I decide I want to record, I do start the research. So I've been in academia through master's and doctoral programs. So I've been, I guess you could say, fortunate enough to have done research, extensive research in academia. And so I kind of take some of the tips and tricks that I've learned, and I dig in. I like to know origins. I especially like the origin of words, where words come from, where names come from. I find that to be really enlightening when you're talking about the history of something. And and then I just look at all kinds of sources: blogs, books, articles, academic publications, anything and everything I can find. Sometimes I dig deeper. Sometimes I spend a week or two researching something. Sometimes I spend just a couple of days. So really just depends on the topic and how much time I decide to dedicate to it.
So do you have a set structure then, and do you actually script the show?
I outline. I have scripted a few episodes, and they came off a little more robotic than what I wanted. Yep. But I like to have some kind of structure. So I try and outline. I put kind of key points, and I feel like that's a good way to remember things too, is to kind of highlight, put a key point, and then put like a symbol or something, and make yourself recall specific information on the fly. And it seems more natural too, like having a conversation. So I try and make it seem relatively natural, like I'm just talking. I was a teacher, so I feel like I'm sometimes talking to a class, or just having a discussion with friends.
So how do you actually decide what order you're doing the topics on? Is it based on what you're going to hit in this story that you tell at the end?
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes, yes. This season, I really wanted to dive into different Santa Claus characters in 2022. So that's really what I'm focusing on. And there possibly, hint, might be some connections to some of these, some of the historical Santa Claus characters around the world that come into the story in their own way, or bits and pieces. But for season 2 and season 1, sometimes I tied it in if it fit. Sometimes it fit, sometimes it didn't. So I don't make a point to do it unless it just is like a very natural, like very obvious connection.
Hi, this is Amy Hughes from Cool for Cats, a Squeeze podcast, and I'd like to wish all of the listeners of Pods Like Us happy holidays, and especially a very Merry Christmas.
So, here we go. We're on this bit now. So, top 5 Christmas things to yourself. What are the top 5 favorite or things that you think are essential to your Christmas?
So one, I think the process of decorating, and
Yeah.
for some people that's, a day or an afternoon or something. For some people it's an ongoing process over a couple of weeks where they slowly pull things out of the shed or the attic or the basement. So just the process. My wife and I, we are blessed with two lovely children. They're smart and funny, and we've been trying to build traditions with our kids and decorating and letting the kids contribute to putting things on the tree, putting out decorations, choosing where we put certain things. I like the kids having some ownership in that. So I would say that decoration is one of them. The tree is also really important to me, and I think just because as a kid that was always the magic, like to see. So I'm allergic to most of the like real Christmas trees, like the spruce and the cedar and stuff. So I can't have a real tree, and I never did growing up. But so we have an artificial tree. I will plug Balsam Hill trees; they are fantastic. So, but so just setting up, seeing a box and that box turning into this illuminated, magical, sort of lit and dynamic tree that it's not even really a tree anymore. It turns into like a centerpiece of the house. I absolutely love that. Three Christmas things. Movies. My favorite Christmas movie is Die Hard. So, and we can argue all day about that. If as far as animated movies, I like the old Rankin Bass movies. So give me Frosty, Rudolph, Year Without a Santa Claus, any of those. I'll watch those as well. So Christmas movies, Christmas tree, the process of decorating, the spirit that people have. Now, there are plenty of people who are dour and mean and grumpy at Christmas time, but that's a choice that people make. To me, the Christmas spirit is the hope and the potential that society has. That's how I see it. Is there's all this potential for people to be good and to be kind and to share with each other. And you see angel trees, you see all these food donations. There's so much opportunity, and I wish that it existed more so around the rest of the year. But it's great to see it at Christmas time, all the generosity and the giving and caring. So I would say that Christmas spirit. And then lastly, sweaters and clothes. I love Christmas sweaters and clothes. I know I absolutely adore your shirt. I will say, sadly, so I have about 30 Christmas sweaters and shirts, but only about 2 of them fit now. I've in the last year and a half, I've gone through a big weight loss, and so none of my clothes fit anymore, and the ones that do are still very baggy. So I'm in the process of handing those off to new owners and looking for new Christmas clothes. So next year I'll be fully decked out.
Yeah, I like collecting them. Every time I do a Christmassy episode, I try and wear a different one each time. So I've got all sorts, including one of my favourites is one where it's the Grinch, and you've not got quite the full Merry Christmas word there because he's stealing the word Christmas.
Love it. My son is fascinated with the Grinch right now as well, so he would love that. That's great.
So, Christmas. What advice would you give to people then coming up to Christmas? Because we were saying before we started recording about we were talking about going a bit behind, pulling the curtain away even more here. So I was talking about the traffic, and people are busy over Christmas, and it's just. Some people are a bit crazy to get things over. So what sort of advice would you suggest to people?
Sure. So, there's lots of schools of thought. I am very much of the belief of be in the moment. Don't look forward to Christmas too much, because then you wind up looking back and wondering how you missed the Christmas season. So try and be very present in the moment. And, it's hard, but give people a break. Somebody cuts you off in traffic, understand maybe they're trying to get home to their kids. Maybe they're trying to get to a store before it closes. We just never know. Maybe they're running behind. And economically right now, things are tough all around the world. So, I think we could be kinder to each other. And that goes for me too. I mean, we can all work on that. So I would recommend, keep that Christmas spirit. That's my personal opinion. Don't be too hard on each other, and then be present. Be very present in the moment.
Yeah. What you were saying there reminded me of I don't know if you know the quote, but to me it's a famous quote from John Lennon where he says, "Life is what happens while you're busy making plans."
It's so true. It is so true. And, our best laid plans never turn out how we hope, right? I mean, they never turn out. So it's okay to plan things and to try and build traditions. And I'm learning this too with my kids and my family. It's okay to plan things and to want these traditions. But the quirky one-offs are the things you remember for the longest time too. When things went awry, when, something didn't happen, or when, something got spilled on something. So just remember those moments and be forgiving with each other.
It's like those magic moments when you go out with somebody, significant, or with people who are significant, and you're just there, and you'll be in the car and you'll say, we'll go wherever we feel like going. Or
That's right.
Just let the moment take you.
And just be together, just enjoy that time together with whoever it is, right? I mean, it could be friends, could be, someone you just met at a pub, could be significant other, could be parent, cousin, niece, nephew, whatever. Just, enjoy that time together. I love that.
Me too. And when you said about the Christmas spirit, that reminds me of, you were talking about the group that you're part of, the network, the Christmas Network podcast. And
yes.
They keep that spirit going throughout the entire year. There is a Christmas magic throughout. And if people are interested, these Christmas shows go on throughout the year, by the way. These podcasts are not just for Christmas.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So many of them do year-round episodes. I tried that, but perhaps when my kids are a bit older, I'll be able to do more year-round podcasting. But I stay pretty much in the Christmas season. But if I could shout out a couple of these guys. So I mentioned Jerry from the Totally Rad podcast. He is just like the best guy. Super, super great podcast. A lot of fun. He talks a lot about 80s stuff. There's obviously Tis the Podcast, which is kind of the big one that a lot of people think of. And they obviously for great reasons. Their content is great. Their banter is wonderful. And, there's, Tinsel Tunes, Seasons Eatings. Yep. There's the Behind the Bells, which is great. I really enjoy Robert's work on that show. He does an excellent job. There's also the Christmas podcast, which is kind of an update. He sends out an update every week about all the different Christmas podcasts. So if you want to know who to listen to, that's a great one. And he does constant updates. There's Tim from Can't Wait for Christmas, who does a great job as well. There's so many, dozens and dozens. There's Santa Matt from North Pole Radio. Check that out. That's a good one. He's a professional Santa, and he has a podcast and he talks about all kinds of fun stuff. So, so many. And if anybody ever wants to find out, just please email me or message me on any of the social networks, which I think is a good segue into where to find me. So, the podcast is available on all the major podcast networks. We've got the Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play Podcasts, Stitcher. I think I've submitted to 25 or 30 different podcast services just to make it out there. So if anybody, also on social media, Lost Christmas Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Those are tied together. Twitter is at Lost Christmas P1, because apparently Twitter had a limit on the number of letters I could have in my handle. But you can search Lost Christmas Podcast and I'll come up there too. So please find me, message me. I try and be real responsive. I try to respond to everybody. Please reach out. Let me know what you think. And please feel free.
Wow. That was very quick. We've got to fill this out, Jeff.
That was super fast. So how about I interview you a little bit about some of your favorites at Christmas? So
Go
What's
on,
your
then.
favorite Christmas movie?
My favourite Christmas movie is probably, I don't know whether to say Elf or one that has a real special place for me is the version of A Christmas Carol that's called Scrooge with Albert Finney,
Yes.
the
Okay.
musical.
Yeah,
because,
lovely.
I was brought up with that, so it was a thing in my family. It's one of my mum's favourite films anyway. So we used to watch it all of the time, and now it's become a staple that we have to watch that. There must be about 4 or 5 different versions of that story that we watch each year,
Love
including
it.
the Muppets, of
So
course.
yeah, that's great. I love A Christmas Carol. My wife and I, since 2009 when we started dating, we've done a different version of A Christmas Carol every Christmas. So whether that's at, a live theater production or a musical, or we saw a one woman show that was from Marley's perspective, which was super interesting. We didn't know it was a one woman show when we bought tickets, so that was quite a trip. I love that. That's great.
We've seen.
Are you
We've seen
oh,
I was going to say we've seen
Go
it
ahead.
as a play a couple of times.
Mhm.
We've seen a couple of versions as a play, and we've also seen one ballet troupe in the UK actually
Ooh.
made it into a ballet as well, which we saw, which was
Interesting.
fantastic.
That sounds great. We'll have to look into that. That's I live in the Dallas area, Dallas, Texas, in the United States, and the Dallas theater system is pretty expansive. The Dallas art scene is surprisingly big for those that aren't aware, and they do a really great production of A Christmas Carol every year. And it's a big, huge theatrical production. The tickets sell out like months in advance, and highly recommended if anybody's ever in Dallas to check that out at Christmas time. But I absolutely, I love it. I love all the different renditions. Scrooge, there's a new Netflix musical animated special this year that just came out, I guess, like a week ago, and I finished watching that this morning, and I thought it was okay. It wasn't bad. Not my favorite. I think Netflix kind of like has a stake in an animation company. But I would still check it out. The music is good. It's different. It has a sort of a slightly different take on it. So I would definitely recommend that.
Okay.
Hi, it's Zach from Belated Binge Harry Potter, and I'd like to remind all the listeners of Pods Like Us that it isn't Christmas without Hogwarts and a Harry Potter marathon.
I love animation. Always have. It goes back to Rankin Bass. I could go on, and I will say I like those, like, I think it's 89, 85. It was one of the last, if not the last, Rankin Bass special was the Life and Adventures of Santa Claus, the stop motion.
Okay.
And it was made into a cartoon in the late 90s. But in the 85 version, I really enjoyed that. And that might be my favorite Rankin Bass stop motion special of all time. I definitely recommend that. Cricket on the Hearth is good too. And Nestor, the long-eared Christmas donkey, is one that is very controversial in some crowds. So, but I thought it's fine for a kid's movie. It's been a long time since I've seen it. So if there's something super offensive in it, I apologize in advance if somebody watches it. Like I said, it's been 20 years probably since I've seen it all the way through.
I'm glad you shouted out Cricket on the Hearth because I've been wanting to see that one because I've never seen it, but it is a favourite of mine for anybody interested. Charles Dickens didn't just write A Christmas Carol. That wasn't his only Christmas story. Cricket on the Hearth is also one of his stories. I think he did 5 or 6 of them because I've got a book full of all of his. Actually, it's a box. Yeah. It's a box with all the different stories in there in their own individual books.
Yeah, I was very surprised to find out that he wrote several Christmas stories, and in fact, several of them are quite good. I mean, they're not, they don't get quite the same play as A Christmas Carol for good reason. I mean, it's become this timeless classic, but there's lots of good Christmas literature. Do you have a favorite Christmas book that you like, that you return to, or that you've come back to?
I hate to repeat myself here, but I do read A Christmas Carol quite often, actually. But another, I'm going to do some plugging here. I've recently got 2 books, one by Beth Kempton, who does the podcast A Calm Christmas, and the book is called A Calm Christmas and a Happy New Year. And that's full
Lovely.
of all little. So that's one of those books that you can dip into for ideas. So there'll be like there's recipes in there, or there's words there to, from different philosophies to actually help you to stay calm over Christmas technically, and to help make your Christmas a lot easier without all the hustle bustle that everybody has. And there's all
That's great.
these other things in there. I like books like that where you can just dip in and pop your hand in basically and just open it up and there's something there.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, that's wonderful.
And
That's very good to hear.
The guys from, where have I put the book? Can I get to it? Ooh. The guys from Deck the Hallmark, who go through Christmas films on Hallmark, they also came out with a book, and I can't remember the title of it. I've got it hidden behind this box, I think, somewhere. I'm not going to make a noise and look for it.
I was just looking at this over the side too. Oh, here we go. Here's one. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but it's a Die Hard Christmas, and it's a kind of Die Hard in the Night Before Christmas style. So kind of telling the Die Hard story in that style, which we can talk about how Clement C. Moore gets credit for The Night Before Christmas, but probably did not write it. Have we? I don't know if you've had many people discuss that, but that's one of my favorite tidbits of Christmas argument that I enjoy.
No, I have not. I've got some editing to do because that box just fell down.
Oh, you're fine. Yeah, you're good.
There's that book by Beth Kempton, by the way.
Ah, perfect. Calm Christmas.
Yep.
Love it. I'll have to check that out. Let me write that down.
I better tag her so that she knows I've given her some promotion.
I will too, actually. I will. Feel free to. Go ahead and reach out.
Funnily enough, I have actually ordered Brian Earl's book that he's brought out. So he's done his podcast Christmas Past for all these years, and he's written a book now, and it's available in America, but in the UK it comes out on the 6th of January in the UK. So
well, call it an Epiphany book then. There we go. See, it is disappointing when it comes out after Christmas, but it'll be a good. You can say that the 3 wise men, or the Reyes Magos, or the 12 wise men, if you're more Eastern Orthodox, depending on your sect. That's they're going to bring it to you on Epiphany Eve. It'll drop in you leave your shoe out, leave some hay for the camels, and there you go. You get a nice little gift.
That's a nice idea. So an interesting one is how many different philosophies and religions festivities are as well. So, and they'll all sort of like run in tandem almost with each other. So you get Christmas for the more Christian side of people, secular for most of us, and then you've got Hanukkah, and you've got all these other festivities and winter solstice that all seem to come at the same sort of time. Do you think there's a reason for that?
I do, actually. So historically, the winter time is the time when harvests are completed and people are stuck inside. And so storytelling is most prominent. And I think that plays a big role in, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. In the Southern Hemisphere, you don't see this quite as often. And there's more of the like July and August sort of time of year, just from a historical wintertime perspective, from what I've researched. And because of the fact that people are stuck inside and there's wind howling and there's not as much in the way of kind of outdoor activities and group gatherings, there's just this history of telling stories and exchanging and explaining the sounds and the terrifyingness. And so I think that has a lot to do with it. And once you reach the solstice, it's that time where the days start to get longer again after shrinking. And so that's kind of like a New Year celebration in a lot of places. And so really when Christianity spread throughout a lot of Western Europe and then to other places, it brought with it the Christian real celebration was in Easter. And there were all of these, they call them pagan, but just basically non-Christian celebrations around wintertime. And so in order to appease the people that they were taking over, they kind of incorporated and they joined together these celebrations. And so you see even Christian Christmas incorporates a lot of these historical oddities and interesting traditions that are rolled in. And I'm a person of faith, but I'm not going to hold my head in the sand and say that, that none of these traditions existed before Christianity spread and got its influence all over the world. So there's some fascinating traditions from Egypt and Iran to Germany and the Nordic countries to the New World across the pond in the Americas. There's tons of traditions of celebrating the winter time, the dark and cold time. So I find it fascinating. That's one of the main reasons that I would love to research this stuff is I get to find all this cool stuff, and the ghost stories are fun at Christmas time too, because there's lots of those, lots and lots of those.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I remember, I think it seemed to become a really big thing. Ghost stories did. I think especially in the UK, there were a lot of ghost stories that you would find in Edwardian times and Victorian times. And I think in a way, I think that was possibly because those were dark times. I mean, that's why you've got, we've already mentioned it, the Charles Dickens, and he was writing during this sort of era as well.
Most definitely.
And I think it was almost a way to sort of like, and I think the fact that it's during that cold time, it's almost like there were such bleak times essentially for a lot of people back then that I think in a sense it gave them something to make things better. Essentially, it's a bit like I say about a lot of television is escapism in a way. So
Most
for this
definitely.
very short period of time, it gives people the chance to just forget about those things for a few days or however long they want to, and just it be about what's more important, which is the family and the friends and the whole joy and happiness and just enjoying each other's company. And then you come back to your problems afterwards.
I completely agree. I think there's a constant need in dark and less happy times for some sort of light, some sort of hope, right? A beacon in the night, if you will. And I think a lot of Christmas stories tell that. They have that, no matter how bad you are, right? You look at Scrooge. No matter how awful a person you are, there's an opportunity and there's a beacon, and you can help other people. And if you're one of the ones who's downtrodden, then there's somebody there who has the opportunity to help you too. So it kind of has a positive outlook all around in some ways.
Absolutely. So, what was I going to say? So, have you got any actual favourite Christmas songs? Whether they be carols or songs by artist or whatever.
Ooh, yes. So Deck the Halls always gets me in the spirit. Rocking Around the Christmas Tree. I love that one. Jingle Bell Rock. And really, honestly, anything by Sinatra and the Rat Pack gets me. But let's go Blue Christmas by Elvis, the Elvis version specifically. And then lastly, I'll go with a hymn, and Hark the Herald Angels Sing is probably my favorite hymn. I would go with that one. So those would be my five. At least if you ask me in this moment right now. If you ask me tomorrow, that might be different based on what I've heard on the radio.
Have you fallen foul to the Wham song yet?
So what's funny is I despised that song for the longest time, and now I love it. And maybe it's because my 5-year-old daughter loves it, and she never gets the words right, but she loves to sing it nonetheless. And so I'm here for it because she has an angelic voice in my ears. So it's a joyful noise, as they call it. I'll take it. So I give me some George Michael at Christmas. I'll take it.
Absolutely. And it's lovely now that it's that all the proceeds now actually go to charity as well for that song.
Yes, most definitely. It's a great, and the movie is wasn't terrible from a couple of years ago. I forget. It was called Last Christmas, but it's not bad. I think it was 2 years ago.
Yep. Emilia
was
Clarke.
Not bad. Yes, Emilia Clarke, yep. The mother of dragons herself.
That's true. Yes. Yep. Because the story behind that charity thing, I think, is that am I right in thinking that when George died himself, George Michael of Wham, because it was a gift almost when Wham finished, he gifted it so that he credited it as written by himself and his colleague Andrew Ridgeley from the group Wham.
Mm-hmm.
And I think then when when George passed away, Andrew basically said all proceeds from this from now on will go to these charities. So he's basically renounced his own portion to go to charities, and George's portion also goes to charity now from his estate. So, which is a great
That's
thing.
Wonderful. It is. Yeah. There's that Christmas spirit, right? You can't beat it. That beacon of light. There is the possibility of people doing great things and good things for each other, just because. So there we go. There's the Christmas spirit.
There is.
I love it.
If anyone wants to know another bit of trivia, it also means that in 1984 at Christmas, George Michael essentially was at number 1 and number 2, because Last Christmas was held off by Do They Know It's Christmas by Band Aid, on which he sang.
Interesting. Okay. Huh.
Full of trivia.
That's a good one. I'll have to add that. We have a work Christmas trivia that we get to submit questions to. That's next week. Ooh. So I'm going to steal that one. I'm going to steal that one from you.
You could say, who's the only person to have been on the Christmas charts number 1 and 2 in the UK? So you could sort of word it around that, couldn't you? Yeah.
Love that. Yeah, that's great.
There we go.
That's wonderful.
Anyway, you can find Pods Like Us at Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok, and you can contact me through podslikeus@gmail.com. If anybody wants to, they can also find me at Patreon, where for £1, only £1 per month, you will get bonus footage, extra podcast, and I do a little show called The Quick 5, where in 5 minutes I will tell you about 5 podcasts with a specific theme. Anyway, thank you very much. It's only £1. It's only £1.
That's right. Nothing. Just £1. That's it.
Anyway,
that's less than a cup of coffee.
It is, which I got one of while we were talking. There you go. Anyway, thank you everyone for listening, and hope you listen again to another episode of Pods Like Us. Hello, and watch it to... sorry. Dear me. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you very much for this. I wish I could have spoken for a lot longer, because when you mentioned you could talk about Santa for hours on end, I was thinking, if I had more time, I'd be very happy to speak about Santa and the history, because I'm fascinated with the whole, how it's changed over the years.
Oh man. Well, let's set it up for next year sometime. You can have me on and we can talk all things Christmas and whatever else you want to talk about. We can go through it. I'd love to.
Next Christmas then. That's a date, as they say. I'll bring yourself, me, I'll get hold of Brian and somebody else, and we'll just have a good hour and a half chat about the history of Santa Claus.
Love it. Love it.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you so much.
Right, I'll press stop so that it's